First, let me create a detailed outline for this story. Introduction to narrator. Emma, 32-year-old successful professional. Brief mention of the fancy dinner situation. The shock and humiliation of being seated at children's table. The breaking point moment that changed everything. Call to action for viewers. Emma's position in family, youngest of 3 siblings. Family dynamics growing up. Pattern of being treated as the baby. Parents and older siblings. Brother Mark, sister Olivia background. Previous instances of being infantilized despite adult accomplishments. Emma's professional success, senior marketing executive contrasted with family's perception. History of Emma trying to assert herself and being dismissed. Family's refusal to see her as an equal adult. Occasion for the fancy dinner parents' 40th anniversary celebration. Initial excitement about being included in family event. Details of the upscale restaurant and formal dress code. Emma's preparations, new dress, professional styling, thoughtful gift, hopes for finally being treated as an adult family member, travel arrangements and anticipation, text exchanges with siblings before the event seeming normal, arrival at the restaurant and initial greetings, moment of discovering the seating arrangement, physical description of children's table, smaller chairs, paper placemats, etc. Ages of the children at the table all under 12. Emma's initial confusion thinking it was a mistake. Family's casual dismissal of her concerns. Specific comments from family members. You've always been good with kids. Emma's attempts to address the situation being ignored. Other adults, including younger spouses of cousins at main table. The feeling of being on display and humiliated. Emma's internal struggle during appetizers. Attempts to maintain composure while processing the insult. Observation of family dynamics from children's table position. Overhearing conversations about adult topics she's excluded from. The final straw. Family taking group photo without her. The moment of clarity and decision to stand up for herself. Rising from children's table and addressing the entire family. Calling out the pattern of infantilization. Family's shocked reaction to her assertiveness. Walking out of the restaurant. Immediate response texts, calls from family members, different reactions from different family members, parents' dismissive attitude, overreacting narrative, sister's passive-aggressive response, brother's surprising private support, extended family gossip and taking sides, Emma's decision to maintain boundaries, first family event missed cousin's baby shower, the escalating family campaign to bring her back into line, Emma's growing confidence in her decision, therapy journey to address family-induced insecurities, recognition of unhealthy patterns, establishing clear communication boundaries, building stronger non-family relationships, first holiday season apart from family, creating new traditions and support system, improve self-confidence at work and personal life, selective reconnection with supportive family members, learning to define herself outside of family perceptions, first time hosting own gathering without family judgment. 1 year later, changes in family dynamics. Parents' eventual acknowledgement though limited. Siblings' evolved perspective. Emma's transformed sense of self-worth. Attendance at next family gathering on her terms. Proper seating at the adults' table without comment. Reflections on the importance of self-advocacy. Balanced relationship with family now. Lessons learned about boundaries and respect. Message to viewers about recognizing and addressing infantilization. Call to action for comments like subscriptions. Now I'll write the complete story based on this outline. I'm Emma, 32, and I never expected a seating arrangement to be the final straw in my relationship with my family. After years of being treated like a child despite my accomplishments, finding myself seated at a table with my nieces and nephews while everyone else, including my younger cousin's new boyfriend, enjoyed adult conversation was surreal. The moment my father dismissed my concerns with, "You've always been good with kids," something inside me finally snapped. Before I share the story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up to family members who refuse to see you as an adult. Drop a comment if you've experienced the frustration of being infantilized by the people who should respect you most. Now let's dive into how a single dinner reservation changed my family dynamics forever. Growing up as the youngest of 3 children in our suburban Boston home, I was always little Emma, or the baby of the family. labels that seemed innocent enough when I was actually a child. My brother Mark is 7 years older, and my sister Olivia is 5 years my senior. From the earliest days, I can remember our family had a clear hierarchy, with my siblings granted privileges and respect that always seemed just beyond my reach regardless of my age. Our parents, Robert and Catherine Williams, ran a successful real estate business together, providing us with a comfortable upper middle class lifestyle. They were loving in their way, but traditional in their family values and expectations. My father, a second-generation Irish American with an imposing presence, believed firmly in family loyalty above all else. My mother, more soft-spoken but equally determined, was the diplomatic force in our home, though she deferred to my father on most major decisions. Mark, the firstborn and only son, was groomed from an early age to be the responsible one, the achiever, the future businessman. My parents consulted him on family decisions from the time he was a teenager. Olivia, beautiful and socially adept, became my mother's confidant and my father's princess. She could make my stern father laugh like no one else could. And then there was me, arriving years later when my parents thought they were done having children. Our surprise blessing, they called me though. Sometimes it felt more like I was an afterthought in a family that had already established its dynamics without me. The pattern of infantilization began early. When I was 16 and Mark was 23, he was entrusted with managing his own investment portfolio with guidance from our father. When I turned 23 and asked for the same opportunity, I was patted on the head and told, "Let's wait until you're a bit more mature, sweetie." During family discussions about politics or current events, my opinions were met with indulgent smiles or outright dismissal, regardless of how well informed I was. "Emma, the adults are talking," my father would say well into my 20s, often followed by, "You'll understand these things when you're older." What made this treatment particularly frustrating was that outside my family, I was recognized as a competent, intelligent adult. I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern University with a double major in marketing and psychology, turned down a prestigious marketing firm in Chicago to accept an even better offer in Boston, and by 30 had been promoted to senior marketing executive at one of the city's top advertising agencies. My career trajectory was by any objective measure impressive. Yet to my family, these accomplishments seemed to exist in some parallel universe, acknowledged with obligatory pride, but never quite changing how they interacted with me. While my siblings' career milestones were celebrated with champagne dinners, mine were marked with the same kind of praise one might give a child for a good report card. "Look at our little Emma playing in the big leagues." My dating life received similar treatment. Mark's relationships were respected from the beginning. His girlfriends treated as potential wives, his breakups as significant emotional events. When he married Sarah at 29, my parents helped with the down payment on their first home. Olivia's boyfriend turned husband, Jason, was welcomed into family decision-making, almost immediately consulted on everything from vacation plans to my father's retirement investments. Meanwhile, my relationships were referred to as Emma's little boyfriends, well into my late 20s. When I dated Michael, a pediatric surgeon, for 2 years in my late 20s, my mother still asked if we were going steady. When we broke up due to career conflicts, he received a fellowship opportunity in Seattle. My very real heartbreak was treated as though I'd lost a high school crush. "You'll find another nice boy soon," my mother assured me as if I were 16 instead of 28. My apartment, my finances, my career decisions, all were subject to unsolicited advice and oversight long past the point where my siblings had been granted autonomy in these areas. When I purchased my condo at 30, my father insisted on inspecting it and then told the real estate agent, not me, what my final offer would be. When I objected, he seemed genuinely surprised. "I'm just looking out for you, pumpkin," he said. "Someone needs to make sure you're not getting taken advantage of." Holidays and family gatherings became increasingly difficult to navigate as this pattern persisted. At Thanksgiving dinner when I was 31, I found myself assigned to the kitchen to help my mother and aunts, while Mark and Olivia sat with my father and uncles discussing important family business, namely my grandfather's estate planning. When I attempted to join that conversation, having recently completed my own estate planning with a financial advisor, my father gently suggested I leave the complicated stuff to those with more experience. The fact that I managed million-dollar marketing campaigns for major clients was apparently irrelevant. I tried multiple approaches to change this dynamic. I attempted direct conversations with my parents. I feel like you still see me as a child, not as the adult I am. These were met with dismissive reassurances. Don't be silly, of course we know you're an adult. You're just always going to be our baby girl. I tried demonstrating my competence through my actions, sharing professional accomplishments and financial milestones, only to have them minimized or attributed to luck rather than skill. "You've always had things fall into your lap," was Olivia's response when I mentioned my promotion to senior management. I tried setting boundaries only to have them trampled with well-intentioned concern. When I declined my mother's offer to come redecorate my new condo, explaining I'd hired an interior designer, she showed up anyway with paint samples and curtain catalogs telling me, "You need someone with experience to help with these big decisions." Each attempt to establish myself as an equal adult in my family's eyes seemed to reinforce their perception that I was just going through a phase of trying to act grown up. It was as if they were so committed to their image of me as the baby of the family that no amount of evidence could change it. By my 32nd birthday, I had begun to create some emotional distance, limiting my visits and phone calls, sharing less of my personal and professional life with them. It wasn't a conscious strategy, so much as a natural withdrawal from relationships that had become increasingly frustrating. Then came the invitation to my parents' 40th anniversary dinner, and with it, a renewed hope that perhaps on this significant family occasion, I might finally be treated as the adult I had been for over a decade. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday in early April, a thick cream envelope with my parents' monogram embossed in gold on the back flap. Inside was a formal card announcing a celebration of 40 years of love and partnership to honor Robert and Catherine Williams, to be held at Maison Laurent, one of Boston's most exclusive French restaurants. The dress code indicated formal attire, and the RSVP card requested responses by the end of the month. I was genuinely touched to be included. Despite my frustrations with my family dynamic, I loved my parents and wanted to celebrate the significant milestone with them. 40 years of marriage was an impressive achievement, and whatever our difficulties, I respected the commitment and partnership they had maintained for 4 decades. The timing of the invitation coincided with a major professional achievement for me. My team had just secured the largest account in our agency's history, a national campaign for a major tech company that would bring in over $15 million in revenue. As the lead strategist on the pitch, I had received significant recognition within the industry, including a profile in Adweek magazine, highlighting my innovative approach to the campaign. Perhaps I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to reintroduce myself to my family as the accomplished professional I had become. With my career reaching new heights, surely they would finally see me through new eyes. I called my mother immediately to confirm my attendance. "Emma, darling, we're so glad you can make it," she said warmly. "It means the world to us to have all the children there." I cringed slightly at being included in all the children, but let it pass. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Mom. I'm really looking forward to it." "It's going to be quite an elegant affair," she continued. "Your father wanted something really special. Mark and Sarah are flying in from Chicago, and Olivia and Jason are bringing the kids, of course." "That's great," I said sincerely. "It'll be nice to see everyone together. By the way, did you happen to see the Adweek article I sent you the link last week?" "Oh, was that the thing about your work?" "I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's been so busy with the anniversary planning. But I'm sure it was lovely. You always were so creative with your little projects." I swallowed my disappointment at having a major career feature reduced to a little project and steered the conversation back to the anniversary plans. "Do you need any help with the arrangements? I'd be happy to coordinate with the restaurant or handle any details." "That's sweet of you, but we've got everything under control. Mark has been handling the financial arrangements, and Olivia has been a godsend with the guest list and seating chart. You just focus on looking pretty for the photos, dear." The dismissal was so automatic, so casually delivered, that my mother probably didn't even realize how it sounded. I was 32 years old, managed multi-million-dollar accounts, led a team of 15 marketing professionals, but in my family's eyes, my contribution was to look pretty. Still, I was determined to approach the evening with optimism. I spent a considerable amount on a sophisticated black evening gown from a high-end boutique, scheduled appointments for professional hair and makeup styling, and purchased a pair of diamond earrings as an anniversary gift for my parents, an extravagance made possible by my recent bonus. In the weeks leading up to the event, I exchanged texts with both Mark and Olivia. Mark was his usual reserved self, but mentioned looking forward to catching up on adult stuff, without the distraction of his children for once. Olivia sent updates about her dress shopping and complaints about finding childcare for the evening since her children, my niece Abigail 10 and nephew Ethan 8, would be attending the dinner. Formal dinner with kids. Brave choice, I texted her. Mom and Dad insisted on having the grandkids there, she replied. You know how they are. Family means everyone. The day of the anniversary dinner arrived. My hair was styled in an elegant updo. My makeup was flawless but subtle, and the black gown fit perfectly, projecting exactly the image of sophisticated professionalism I wanted to present. Looking in the mirror before leaving my condo, I hardly recognized the insecure baby of the family I so often felt like in my parents' presence. Instead, I saw a confident, successful woman ready to celebrate with her family as an equal. I arrived at Maison Laurent precisely at 6:30, the time indicated on the invitation. The restaurant was housed in a renovated 19th century mansion in Boston's Back Bay, with soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and impeccable service. A private room had been reserved for our celebration, and as I entered, I was struck by how beautiful everything looked. White roses and lilies adorned every table, candles created a warm, intimate atmosphere, and a string quartet played softly in the corner. My parents stood near the entrance greeting guests as they arrived. My mother looked elegant in a deep blue gown that complemented her silver hair, and my father distinguished in a classic tuxedo. They both embraced me warmly. Emma, you look beautiful, my mother said, kissing my cheek. Stunning, my father agreed. Our little girl all grown up. I suppressed a sigh at little girl and handed them the wrapped box containing the diamond earrings. Happy anniversary! 40 years is quite an accomplishment. As more guests arrived, a mix of family members, longtime friends, and business associates, I mingled comfortably, greeting relatives I hadn't seen in months or years. I spotted Mark and his wife Sarah across the room, both looking polished and professional. Olivia was adjusting her son's bow tie, while her husband Jason chatted with our father's business partner. The atmosphere was festive and elegant, exactly what my parents deserved for such a significant milestone. For a brief moment, I felt fully part of this celebration, an adult among adults, celebrating our parents' enduring marriage. Then the maitre d' announced that dinner would be served, and guests were invited to find their assigned seats. I looked around for a place card with my name, assuming I would be seated at one of the 3 large round tables set with fine china crystal glassware and elaborate floral centerpieces. Instead, my mother approached and took my elbow. Emma, darling, you're over here, she said, guiding me toward a smaller rectangular table set up in the corner of the room. As we approached, I realized with growing disbelief that this was a children's table. The chairs were smaller, the place setting simpler, and instead of the elegant centerpieces, there were coloring placemats and small packages of crayons. Already seated were my niece and nephew Abigail and Ethan, along with my cousin's children, 5 kids ranging in age from 6 to 11. Mom, I said quietly, stopping in my tracks. There must be some mistake. She patted my arm reassuringly. No mistake, dear. We thought it would be nice for the children to have an adult with them, and you've always been so good with kids. This way they won't feel left out of the grown-up party. I stared at her, struggling to process what was happening. But I am a grown-up. Why am I not seated with the other adults? Don't make a fuss, Emma, she whispered, her smile never wavering. Everyone's watching. We just thought this arrangement would work best for everyone. Best for everyone or best for you? I asked, my voice low but tense. Now you're just being difficult, she said, her smile tightening. It's our anniversary. Please don't create a scene. Before I could respond, Abigail spotted me and waved enthusiastically. Aunt Emma, you're sitting with us. Awesome. Trapped by my niece's innocent enthusiasm and my mother's expectant gaze, I found myself walking to the children's table and taking the only adult-sized chair, feeling as though I were moving through some bizarre dream. As my mother returned to the main tables, I looked around the room and saw that everyone else, including cousins younger than me and spouses who had joined the family just months ago, was seated at the adult tables. Mark caught my eye from his prime position at the table with my parents and gave me a small shrug and an apologetic smile. Olivia seemed not to notice anything amiss, chatting animatedly with our aunt, while her husband poured wine for the guests near him. My father was engaged in conversation with his business associates, completely oblivious to what had just transpired. "Aunt Emma, can you help me with the word search?" Ethan asked, pushing his placemat toward me. I looked down at my nephew, then at my elegant evening gown, then at the crayon he was offering me, and felt a surreal disconnection between the adult I knew myself to be and the role I had been assigned in this carefully orchestrated family theater. "Sure, Ethan," I heard myself say, as something inside me began to crack. "Let's find those words." The first course arrived. An exquisite lobster bisque served in delicate porcelain bowls for the adults and chicken fingers with ketchup for the children's table. I watched as the server hesitated before placing a bowl of bisque in front of me, clearly recognizing the absurdity of the situation. "Thank you," I murmured, picking up my spoon while trying to maintain my composure. The children around me chattered happily, oblivious to my growing distress. They were, after all, seated exactly where they belonged, enjoying food prepared with their tastes in mind. I was the only one at the table experiencing the cognitive dissonance of being a 32-year-old marketing executive, seated among elementary school children at my parents' anniversary dinner. "Why do you get different food?" asked my cousin's 7-year-old daughter Maya, eyeing my soup. "Because I'm an adult," I replied, perhaps more firmly than necessary. "Then why are you sitting with us?" she asked with the unfiltered curiosity of a child. "That," I said, taking a sip of water since no wine had been poured at our table, "is an excellent question." From my position in the corner, I had a perfect view of the adult tables. I watched as my parents held court at the center table, surrounded by their closest friends and family members. Mark and his wife were seated to my father's right, engaged in what appeared to be a serious discussion with my father's business partners. Olivia and Jason sat near my mother, laughing at something my aunt had said. The conversation flowed freely among the adults, punctuated by the gentle clinking of fine crystal and the subtle harmonies of the string quartet. Wine was poured generously, the rich burgundy liquid catching the light of the candles as glasses were raised in frequent toasts. Meanwhile, at our table, Ethan had managed to spill his water. Abigail was complaining that her chicken fingers were too hot, and Maya was now coloring directly on the tablecloth instead of her placemat. "Aunt Emma, can I have your bread?" asked 10-year-old Abigail, reaching for my untouched dinner roll without waiting for an answer. "Sure," I said absently, straining to hear snippets of the adult conversations happening just 20 feet away. I caught fragments about my grandfather's estate, my father's upcoming retirement plans, and, most painfully, a discussion about my cousin's recent promotion that had the entire table raising their glasses in her honor. My cousin Rachel, 3 years younger than me, who had just been made assistant manager at a local bank, a position far junior to my own, was being celebrated effusively while I sat corralling children and wiping up spilled apple juice. As the main course was served, filet mignon for the adults, plain pasta with butter for the children, I felt my phone vibrate in my evening bag. Grateful for the distraction, I checked it discreetly under the table. It was a text from Mark. "This seating arrangement is ridiculous. You okay?" I looked up and met his gaze across the room. He raised his eyebrows slightly in question. I gave a tight smile and small shake of my head, then texted back. "Not really. Why didn't you say something?" 3 dots appeared then. "Tried to. Mom insisted you're so good with the kids. Dad agreed." A moment later, another text. "Sorry, Em. This is BS." His acknowledgement should have made me feel better, but somehow it only intensified my frustration. Mark recognized the injustice of the situation, but had ultimately gone along with it just as he had with countless similar indignities over the years. His private sympathy without public support felt hollow. "Can you cut my pasta, Aunt Emma?" asked my cousin's 6-year-old son, pushing his plate toward me. As I mechanically cut the plain noodles into smaller pieces, I heard my father's voice rise in a toast. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate 40 years with my beautiful Catherine." Looking around this room, I see the legacy we've built. our wonderful son Mark, who's following in my footsteps in business, our daughter Olivia, who's given us two beautiful grandchildren, our extended family and dear friends who've been with us through the years. He paused, and for a moment I thought he might acknowledge me, his youngest daughter seated in exile at the children's table, but he simply continued. Family has always been everything to Catherine and me. We're blessed to have such a wonderful one. The adults raised their glasses in a toast while I sat with pasta sauce on my evening gown where Maya had accidentally bumped my arm. The final straw came during dessert. An elaborate three-tiered anniversary cake was wheeled out to appreciative murmurs from the adult tables. The maitre d' announced that before cutting the cake, my parents wanted a family photo to commemorate the occasion. Would the Williams family please gather around Mr. and Mrs. Williams for a photograph? I watched as Mark, Sarah, Olivia, Jason, and the children from our table all moved to join my parents near the cake. I remained seated, unsure if I was even included in the Williams family at this point. Olivia looked over, frowning. Emma, come on! Family photo. Mechanically, I rose and moved toward the group. The photographer, a professional hired for the evening, began arranging people. My parents were positioned in the center, with Mark and his wife on one side, Olivia and her family on the other. The children were placed in front, sitting on little stools provided by the restaurant. And where would you like your youngest daughter? The photographer asked my father, gesturing to me. My father glanced at me as if noticing me for the first time that evening. Oh, Emma can sit with the children. She's always been good with them. Something inside me, a dam holding back years of hurt frustration and suppressed anger, finally broke. No, I said quietly but firmly. I will not sit with the children. I am not a child. A hush fell over the nearby guests. My father looked startled. Emma, don't be difficult, my mother murmured. Everyone's waiting. I've been patient for 32 years, I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Everyone can wait 30 seconds more while I say what needs to be said. I turned to face my parents directly. I will not sit with the children in this photo because I am not a child. I'm a 32-year-old woman with a master's degree, a senior position in a major company, and my own home. Yet tonight, like countless times before, you've made it clear that you still see me as the baby of the family, someone to be seated at the children's table, excluded from adult conversations, and generally treated as if my chronological age is somehow a fiction. My father's face reddened. This is hardly the time or place. It's exactly the time and place, I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness. Because this isn't about one seating arrangement at one dinner. It's about a pattern that's defined our family dynamic my entire adult life. You celebrate Mark's business acumen and Olivia's parenting skills, but my accomplishments are treated as cute hobbies. You consult them on important family matters while sending me off to color with the children. I took a deep breath, aware of the stunned silence that had fallen over the room, but determined to finish now that I had started. I love you both, and I wanted to celebrate your anniversary with you. But I cannot and will not continue to accept being infantilized. I am an adult, and until you can treat me as one, with the same respect you show Mark and Olivia, I need to step back from this dynamic. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked calmly through the crowd of silent guests out of the private dining room, through the main restaurant, and into the cool spring evening. My hands were shaking as I ordered a rideshare on my phone, but my mind felt clearer than it had in years. As I waited on the sidewalk, I heard the restaurant door open behind me. Turning, I saw Mark hurrying toward me, concern etched on his face. Emma, wait. Are you okay? No, I'm not okay, I answered honestly. But I think I will be. That was intense, but not undeserved, he said, running a hand through his hair. Look, for what it's worth, I agree with you. We've all been complicit in how Mom and Dad treat you. Yes, you have, I said, not unkindly, but not letting him off the hook either. You've seen it happening for years and said nothing. He nodded, accepting the criticism. What happens now? Now I go home, and tomorrow I start figuring out what a healthier relationship with this family looks like, if that's even possible. My ride arrived, saving us from further conversation. Mark squeezed my shoulder awkwardly before I got in the car. I'll call you tomorrow, he promised. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak further, and closed the car door. As we pulled away from Maison Laurent, I didn't look back at the celebration continuing without me. Instead, I looked forward through the windshield toward a future where I would no longer accept a seat at the children's table of my own life. The immediate aftermath of what my family would later call Emma's outburst was predictably chaotic. By the time I arrived home that night, my phone was flooded with texts and missed calls. My parents, unsurprisingly, were hurt and confused. My mother's voicemail was tearful. "I don't understand why you would humiliate us like that on our special night. All we've ever done is love you." My father was more direct in his text. "Your behavior was unacceptable. You owe your mother an apology. Call us when you're ready to act like an adult." The irony of him questioning my adult behavior while having seated me at a children's table was not lost on me. Olivia's reaction was swift and defensive. "How could you ruin Mom and Dad's anniversary like that? So selfish. Everyone is talking about your tantrum instead of celebrating their milestone." Several aunts and uncles sent awkward messages expressing concern about my emotional state and offering unsolicited advice about respecting your elders. My cousin Rachel, who had been celebrated for her bank promotion earlier that evening, sent a particularly condescending text. "Sometimes family dynamics are frustrating, but that was not the way to handle it. Grow up, Emma." I turned off my phone, took a long shower to wash away the emotional residue of the evening, and slept more soundly than I had in years. The unexpected benefit of finally saying the words I'd been swallowing for so long. In the clear light of morning, I turned my phone back on to find even more messages, but one stood out. A lengthy text from Mark sent at 3 a.m. "Been thinking about this all night. You're right. We've all played into this dynamic where you're perpetually the baby of the family, regardless of your actual age or accomplishments. I've benefited from it, getting to be the responsible firstborn while you get infantilized, and never challenged it. That's on me. For what it's worth, Mom and Dad are genuinely shocked by your reaction. They truly don't see how their behavior impacts you. Not excusing it, just reporting. Take whatever space you need, but know I support you in this, even if I've been terrible at showing it before." His message was the first acknowledgement from any family member that my experience was valid, and it meant more than I expected. I replied simply, "Thank you for understanding. I need some time." The week following the dinner was a blur of family damage control attempts. My parents shifted rapidly between hurt, "How could you embarrass us in front of everyone?" dismissive, "You're being overly sensitive," and manipulative, "Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of this stress." They seemed incapable of addressing the actual issue I had raised. Olivia took on the role of family mediator, though her version of mediation mostly involved pressuring me to apologize to smooth things over. "Just say you were having a bad day," she suggested during one of her many calls. "Mom's really upset, and you know how Dad gets when Mom is upset." "I understand they're upset," I replied, "but I meant what I said. I won't apologize for finally standing up for myself." "But the timing, Emma? Their anniversary dinner. Couldn't you have picked a better moment?" "When would that have been? The moment I'm finally treated like an actual adult in this family, because that moment never seems to arrive." My refusal to recant or apologize quickly became the new family crisis. Extended family members took sides, with most of the older generation supporting my parents. "They only want what's best for you." And a surprising number of cousins privately messaging me with support. "It's about time someone called out the weird dynamics in this family." The first test of my new boundaries came 2 weeks later when my cousin Stephanie's baby shower was scheduled, a family event I would normally have attended without question. I sent my gift with a polite note explaining I wouldn't be there in person, but wished her well. This deviation from expected family behavior caused another ripple of concern. "Are you still sulking about the anniversary dinner?" my mother asked when she called to question my absence. "Stephanie will be so disappointed." "I'm not sulking, Mom. I'm taking some space to reassess our family dynamic and my place in it. I don't know why you're making such a big deal about a simple seating arrangement. We thought you'd enjoy being with the children." "That's exactly the problem," I explained, struggling to maintain my patience. "You made a decision about what I would enjoy, without considering how it would feel to be the only adult relegated to the kids' table. It's not about one dinner. It's about a pattern of infantilizing me that's gone on my entire adult life. Well, I think you're being overly dramatic. This isn't like you, Emma. You've always been our easygoing girl. And therein lay the problem. I had indeed been the easygoing girl, accepting being overlooked, dismissed, and treated as less than my adult siblings because confrontation felt too difficult. My compliance had reinforced their perception, creating a cycle that would continue indefinitely unless I broke it. I'm still easygoing mom. I'm just no longer willing to be treated like a child. As weeks passed without my usual acquiescence to family expectations, the family's response escalated. My father called to inform me that my mother was crying herself to sleep over my rebellion. My aunt suggested I might need professional help to deal with my sudden personality change. Olivia warned that I was damaging relationships that can never be fully repaired. The pressure was intense and would have been effective in the past, but something fundamental had shifted inside me that night at Maison Laurent. Having finally acknowledged the dysfunction aloud, I couldn't unsee it or return to my role as the perpetual child of the family. The only consistent ally during this time was surprisingly Mark. His initial text of support wasn't a one-time gesture. He called regularly to check in, listened without judgment to my frustrations, and even began pushing back when our parents made dismissive comments about me in his presence. I told Dad yesterday that your marketing campaign for Tech Future was brilliant, he reported during one of our calls. He tried to play it off as you getting lucky with a big client, and I straight up corrected him. Told him you landed that account through strategy and talent, not luck. These small acts of solidarity meant everything as I navigated the challenging terrain of family disapproval. 6 weeks after the anniversary dinner, with family tensions still high, I decided to seek professional support. The therapist I found, Dr. Abrams, specialized in family dynamics and helped me understand the patterns that had defined our relationships for so long. What you're describing is a common family system issue, she explained during our second session. Families often assign roles early on, the responsible one, the peacemaker, the baby. And those roles can become rigid over time, regardless of how the individuals actually grow and change. But why can't they see that I've grown up? I asked, frustrated. It's not like my age is a secret. Because the system depends on you remaining in your assigned role. If they acknowledge you as a full adult with equal standing, the entire family dynamic would need to shift. That's threatening to the established order. With Dr. Abrams' guidance, I began to see how my own behavior had contributed to maintaining this system. My desire for approval had led me to accept treatment I knew was inappropriate. My conflict avoidance had prevented me from establishing boundaries earlier. My learned helplessness in family situations had reinforced their perception of me as needing guidance rather than respect. Breaking family patterns is difficult, Dr. Abrams warned. Expect resistance. When you change how you participate in the system, everyone else is forced to adjust, and most people resist change, especially in long-established relationships. She was right. As I continued to maintain my boundaries, declining family gatherings where I felt uncomfortable, ending phone calls when the conversation became manipulative, refusing to apologize for my outburst, the pressure intensified. My mother began calling my friends to express concern about me. My father suggested to Mark that my company might be working me too hard and affecting my mental health. The narrative they created positioned me as unstable rather than reasonably assertive, troubled, rather than justifiably upset. This framing allowed them to avoid examining their own behavior and instead focus on helping me return to my compliant, childlike role. 3 months after the anniversary dinner, as my parents' campaign to bring me back into line showed no signs of abating, I made another difficult decision. I would need to create more than emotional distance. I needed physical distance as well. When an opportunity arose to lead a major project for my company's West Coast office, I applied for and received a 6-month temporary transfer to San Francisco. The news of my relocation hit my family like a bombshell. My mother was devastated. My father, angry, Olivia, incredulous. Only Mark seemed to understand, offering to help with logistics and promising to visit. "You're moving across the country because of a seating chart?" my mother asked tearfully when I told her my plans. "I'm accepting a fantastic professional opportunity," I corrected gently. "And yes, I also welcome the chance for some space to recalibrate our relationship." What needs recalibrating is your attitude, my father interjected. Running away won't solve anything, Emma. I'm not running away. I'm running toward something, a healthier sense of self-professional growth, and eventually I hope more balanced family relationships. 2 weeks later, I boarded a plane to San Francisco, feeling both the weight of family disapproval and the liberating lightness of choosing my own path. The distance proved to be exactly what I needed. Away from the daily pressure of family expectations, I flourished both professionally and personally. My work on the West Coast project exceeded expectations, earning recognition from the company's senior leadership. I developed new friendships with colleagues who knew me only as a capable professional, not as someone's baby sister. I explored a new city, took up hiking, and even began dating again, meeting a kind, respectful man who related to me as the adult. I was not the child my family perceived. The physical distance also allowed me to establish healthier communication patterns with my family. I scheduled weekly calls with my parents, but ended them politely when they veered into manipulative territory. I sent thoughtful gifts for birthdays and holidays, but declined to attend events where I anticipated being treated as less than an adult. I maintained my close connection with Mark, while setting clear boundaries with Olivia, whose attempts to guilt me into returning to my old role continued unabated. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, small shifts began to occur in how my family interacted with me. My mother started asking questions about my work that indicated actual interest rather than perfunctory acknowledgement. My father occasionally sought my opinion on matters beyond my wardrobe or social life. Even Olivia began to relate to me more as a peer than as a perpetually younger sibling. These changes were inconsistent and incomplete, with plenty of backsliding into old patterns, but they represented progress I wouldn't have thought possible before that night at Maison Laurent when I finally found my voice. The most significant breakthrough came 6 months into my San Francisco assignment, when my parents announced they would be visiting the city for their anniversary trip, a deliberate choice my mother admitted to see me in my new environment. During their visit, I showed them my office, introduced them to my colleagues and friends, and generally allowed them to witness the adult life I had built independent of their perception or approval. On their last evening in town, as we enjoyed dinner at a restaurant overlooking the bay, my father cleared his throat awkwardly. "Your mother and I have been talking," he began, "about what you said at our anniversary dinner." I tensed, prepared for another round of defensiveness or guilt-tripping. "We didn't understand at the time," he continued, surprising me. "But seeing you here in this life you've created for yourself, well, it's made us realize we may have been holding on to an outdated image of who you are." My mother reached across the table to touch my hand. "We're trying, Emma. It's not easy to change how we see you after all these years, but we're trying." It wasn't a perfect acknowledgement of the issues I'd raised, and it certainly wasn't a complete transformation of our relationship. But it was a start, an opening for more honest communication and potentially healthier interactions going forward. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot to me." 1 year after the fateful anniversary dinner where I'd been seated at the children's table, I returned to Boston for my nephew Ethan's birthday celebration. My 6-month assignment in San Francisco had turned into a permanent position I loved, but I flew back regularly to maintain connections with friends and selected family members. The party was held at my sister's home, a casual backyard barbecue rather than a formal restaurant event. As I helped Olivia set up, I noticed she was making a conscious effort to include me in decisions and conversations, rather than assigning me tasks related to the children, as she would have in the past. "Emma, what do you think about these decorations too much?" she asked, gesturing to the elaborate superhero-themed setup. "They look great," I assured her. "Ethan will love them." She nodded, then added hesitantly, "Listen, I've been meaning to say, I think I get it now. What happened last year, I mean." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. "Jason's younger sister came to visit last month, and I caught myself treating her exactly the way we've always treated you. Like she couldn't possibly have adult opinions or responsibilities despite being 29. It was like looking in a mirror and I didn't like what I saw." Her admission surprised and touched me. "That's really insightful, Olivia. Thank you for telling me." She shrugged uncomfortably. I'm not great at apologies, but I am sorry for contributing to that dynamic and for not understanding why it bothered you so much. It wasn't a perfect apology, but from my typically defensive sister, it was remarkable progress. As guests arrived for the party, I braced myself for the usual patronizing interactions with extended family members. There was some of that. My Aunt Diana still asked if I was dating any nice boys, despite my senior executive position, and my Uncle Frank made a comment about me playing at Career Woman in California. But these moments were fewer and less painful than they once would have been, buffered by my stronger sense of self and clearer boundaries. When it came time for the birthday lunch, I automatically scanned the setup, half expecting to find myself directed to a separate kids' table, despite the casual nature of the event. Instead, I watched as my mother approached with a plate of food. "We're eating buffet style," she explained. "But I saved you a seat with us under the big umbrella." She gestured toward where my father Mark and his wife and several other adults were gathered. "Thanks, Mom," I said, genuinely surprised. As I took my seat at the adults' table, a simple act that would have been unremarkable in most families, but represented significant progress in mine, Mark caught my eye and gave me a subtle thumbs up. He understood the significance of this moment as well as I did. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on politics, business, and family news. When I offered my perspective on a market trend affecting my father's industry, he actually listened, asking follow-up questions, rather than dismissing my input as he might have in the past. "You've really got a good grasp of these issues, Emma," he commented, surprise evident in his tone. "I've been working with similar challenges in my own industry," I explained. "The fundamentals are comparable even if the specific applications differ." He nodded thoughtfully. "I'd be interested to hear more about that sometime. Perhaps we could schedule a call next week to discuss it further." It was such a small thing, a father wanting to discuss business with his adult daughter. But in the context of our family's historical dynamics, it felt momentous. Later, as the party wound down and the children played with Ethan's new gifts under the supervision of a hired teenager, my mother approached me as I helped clean up. "It's good to have you home, Emma," she said, wrapping an arm around my waist in a side hug. "Even if it's just for a visit, it's good to be here," I replied, and meant it. "Things feel different," she sighed. "They are different. Not entirely comfortable for your father and me, if I'm being honest. We're still adjusting to this new dynamic." "I appreciate that you're trying," I said sincerely. "That's all I've ever asked for, to be seen and treated as the adult I am, not the child I was." She nodded slowly. "I think what's been hardest is realizing that we genuinely didn't see it, how we were treating you differently from Mark and Olivia. In our minds, you were always just our baby girl, and that didn't seem wrong or hurtful." "I understand that," I assured her. "I know it wasn't malicious, but intention doesn't change impact." "Your therapist taught you that phrase, didn't she?" my mother asked with a small smile. "She did," I admitted, "but that doesn't make it any less true." As the afternoon drew to a close, I found myself in the kitchen with Mark loading the dishwasher while the rest of the family said goodbyes outside. "So," he said, handing me a stack of plates, "quite a difference from last year's anniversary dinner, huh?" "Night and day," I agreed, though we still have a long way to go. "True, but progress is progress. I'm proud of you, Em. Standing up to this family's entrenched patterns took guts." I smiled at my brother, the first ally I'd found in this journey toward healthier family dynamics. "Thanks for backing me up. It would have been much harder without your support." "I should have offered that support years ago," he admitted. "But better late than never, right?" As I drove to the airport that evening for my flight back to San Francisco, I reflected on the complicated, imperfect progress of the past year. My family hadn't transformed overnight into the perfectly respectful, boundaries-honoring unit I might have wished for. There were still slip-ups, still moments of frustration, still occasional attempts to pull me back into old patterns. But the fundamental dynamic had shifted. I had changed how I participated in the system, and slowly, grudgingly, the system was adapting around me. I had proven to myself more than anyone that I could love my family, without accepting disrespect, that I could maintain connections without sacrificing my dignity, that I could be both a daughter and sister, while insisting on being treated as the adult I was. The breaking point at my parents' anniversary dinner, that moment when something inside me finally snapped after being seated at the children's table, hadn't destroyed my family relationships as I had initially feared. Instead, it had created an opportunity to rebuild those relationships on healthier foundations that could actually support the weight of genuine connection, rather than collapsing under the strain of resentment and unmet needs. As my plane took off carrying me back to the independent life I had created, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not for perfect resolution, but for genuine progress. The children's table had been both a humiliation and a catalyst, the final indignity that had pushed me to find my voice and establish my place at the adults' table of my own life. Have you ever experienced being infantilized by family members despite being a fully functioning adult? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of standing up for yourself against established family patterns resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about navigating complex family dynamics. Share this video with someone who might be struggling with similar challenges. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these experiences can be incredibly empowering. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's never too late to claim your rightful seat at the adult table of your own life.